I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
He's inside the school shooting at the gun!
Well, I had to do it because somebody had to do something.
After shooting in the theater, I didn't have a plan of whether to die or not.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. Today we are going to cover a case suggested and voted on by our members, one that we were not familiar with before. You can have an opportunity to do so as well, if you join our membership. It's only $5 a month. Regardless, thank you all for the support, and without further ado, let's get into today's case. I'm sure many of you have attended a festival of some sort in your life. Oftentimes, they are a place to have fun and relax with family or friends. This was the expectation of many attending the annual Gilroy Garlic Festival, located in Gilroy, California at the end of July in 2019. This food-centered festival in particular, as I'm sure you could guess, was themed around garlic, as the city itself is a major producer of this vegetable. It was Gilroy's most fruitful fundraising event, where the money raised would be passed on to nonprofit groups, charities, clubs, and schools. Very sadly, several people just trying to have a nice day at the festival would have their lives completely changed forever when a gunman opened fire on the evening of July 28, 2019. Let's begin by talking about the life of today's shooter, a 19-year-old man named Santino William Legan, though there wasn't a ton of information to go off of. Santino was born on September 20th, 1999, and grew up in Gilroy, California. Santino attended a non-traditional K-12 school called Mount Madonna, in which his older brothers went to as well. While they got on well there and ultimately ended up graduating from the school, Santino left before his freshman year. Even those who knew him during this time later noted that Santino did not fit in well. He was raised by an athletic family, with his father, Tom, being an avid runner and supporter of youth sports. Santino and his brothers seemed to share their father's love of athletics and were often seen jogging or riding bikes around the neighborhood. The family was also into boxing and had even set up a ring inside their garage for the kids to spar in. After leaving the previous school, Santino went on to attend Monte Vista Christian School until the spring of 2016, before yet again deciding to transfer to another school to complete his senior year, this time being Gilroy High School. Though she didn't personally have him in her class, a teacher at this school, who also happened to be the Legan family's neighbor, later recalled that Santino was not a troublemaker, saying, "At school, you know who the bad kids are, and he was not one of them." During a later interview, another neighbor who Santino would briefly interact with described him as a normal, everyday young kid. Santino stuck out the rest of the year at Gilroy High and ended up graduating in 2017. Through some of my research, most information that I read suggests that Santino generally kept to himself while growing up, as nobody who attended any of the schools that he did could remember much about him, most not even being able to recall him at all. One of his only prior classmates to actually remember him said, "He was just someone that I went to school with and was in my grade. I had talked to him maybe 2 or 3 times during my time there." After graduation, Santino moved out of Gilroy and just over 6 hours to Walker Lake, Nevada, a very, very small community of just about 300 people. There, he stood out because he was new to the area, but the local residents later echoed that he didn't really make an impression on anyone, and that he strictly kept to himself. His neighbor from across the street later recalled that he never even heard Santino's voice. The most interaction that he seemed to have with anyone in town was the few times he would wave at others. In fact, Santino's landlord later spoke about him as well, saying that he had shown up with virtually no belongings other than his computer. The landlord definitely thought it was an odd situation, and even apparently told Santino that he should move to a bigger area, as he didn't seem to be the type of person who would want to live in such a small and isolated place. It's important to note that at some point, Santino began delving into extremist views surrounding white supremacy. We will talk about this a bit later in the video, but I wanted to mention it here, since it was in his Lake Walker home that authorities would later find items connected to his concerning views. Because of the move, Santino was able to establish residency in Nevada, which enabled him to make a few purchases that we will now talk about. It was in the town of Fallon, Nevada, about an hour north of Walker Lake, that Santino legally obtained a Wasser 10 rifle on July 9, 2019. He also at some point purchased a Remington 870 shotgun, though the details concerning this aren't as clear. The gun shop owner later said, "I did not know this individual. He ordered the rifle off my internet page. When I did see him, he was acting happy and showed no reasons for concern. I would never ever sell any firearm to anyone who acted wrong or looks associated with any bad group, like white power." His new rifle was banned in California, but that sadly wouldn't stop the massacre that Santino would go on to commit about 3 weeks after the purchase. In fact, this is a big issue when it comes to banned guns making their way into California. According to different studies, depending on the year, thousands of guns are brought into California from neighboring states. I also read about a study on the connection between gun shows in Nevada and the subsequent firearm-related deaths in California, released in 2017 by University of California, Berkeley. The article I read concerning this said, the study found that in the 2 weeks following a Nevada gun show, hospitals in California within 2 hours of the border see a 70% increase in gun-related deaths and injuries. In the time between purchasing the weapons and the attack taking place, Santino made his way back to his hometown of Gilroy, California, with the guns in tow. With all of this out of the way, let's move on to the actual shooting. The third and final day of the 2019 Gilroy Garlic Festival was a hot and busy one. It was just before the festival came to a close on July 28, 2019, that 19-year-old Santino Legan, who I will now refer to as just his last name, put his plan into motion. The festival required attendees to subject themselves to a bag check, as well as let someone scan them with a metal detecting wand. Obviously, this wasn't going to work for Legan, as he would be caught right away. Knowing this, he devised a plan to enter the grounds without having to go through the main entrance. Earlier that day, Legan loaded his vehicle with hundreds of rounds of ammunition and his 2 firearms, the Wasser 10 and the Remington 870. He also packed a pair of bolt cutters, seeing as he would need to gain entry to the event through a locked side gate. Several other items were later recovered from the vehicle, which we will go over after the shooting. Legan arrived at Uvis Park Drive, where he parked his car at this location here. This street is near several paths that wind along Uvis Creek, which partially borders Christmas Hill Park, where the Garlic Festival was being held, about a mile away from where Legan parked his car. Before embarking on the hike down the creek, Legan equipped himself with the bolt cutters, as well as a backpack and bag that both contained multiple additional items. Legan also carried several 40-round magazines on his person. He also grabbed his rifle that was fitted with an underfolder stock, making it easier for him to conceal it. In what seems like a last-minute decision, Legan decided not to take the Remington 870, instead leaving it in the trunk of the vehicle, where police would later find it. Finally leaving his car, it stated that he walked along the creek, using the trees as concealment, going unnoticed by anyone in the area. Sources vary on when Legan arrived at his destination. Some articles state that the time was about 5:40, while others, including the district attorney's report, state that it was actually around 6:30 p.m. that day. Either way, after crossing the creek, he arrived at the northwest corner of Christmas Hill Park and snuck up to a chain-link fence surrounding the festival grounds. It's reported that minutes before his attack began, Legan made a few posts to his Instagram account. One was a picture of people at the festival, with the caption reading, "A, Garlic Festival time. Come get wasted on overpriced shit." It's unclear if he took this picture himself, or when exactly it was taken. It doesn't seem to have been taken just prior to the post being made, but it's possible that he had taken it at a prior time. The other had a caption urging people to read the book, "Might is Right," by Ragnar Redbeard, which was published in the 1890s and is described as an anti-Semitic and misogynistic book. Apparently, it also promotes eugenics, condemns interracial relationships, and glorifies Aryan men. It's reported that this book is popular on extremist websites. I, of course, haven't read it personally, nor do I care to, so I am basing the description solely off of reports. Chapman University sociology professor Peter Simi later spoke about this book, saying, "It's long been a staple within the white supremacist movement. It's part of a much larger set of propaganda literature that folks who identify with different aspects of white supremacist ideology will use as a way to reinforce and support their beliefs." In the same post promoting the book, Legan wrote, "Why overcrowd towns and pave more open space to make room for hordes of mestizos and Silicon Valley white twats?" For those of you who don't know, the word mestizos refers to a person of mixed race. After making these posts, Legan used the bolt cutters he brought to sever a zip tie that was holding a gate in this area closed before discarding it on the ground. At this point, Legan was carrying a fair amount of equipment on him. He seemingly decided to get rid of some of his cargo, dropping his backpack and bag on the trail, which contained 2 fully loaded 40-round magazines for his rifle, a scope, a shovel, and a flashlight. Also inside the backpack were additional loose rounds for both the rifle and shotgun. Legan was already carrying 5 40-round magazines, with 2 sets of 2 being taped together. Along with these, he had a 75-round drum, so I imagine leaving behind the 2 magazines in the backpack did not matter much to him. It's possible that it was during this time that Legan donned his bullet-resistant vest. I personally believe that Legan may have kept it off for the walk, so as to not draw any unwanted attention to himself. He also took time to put on elbow pads for whatever reason. After emerging onto the festival grounds, Legan made his way past a line of portable toilets towards an inflatable slide that was actively being used by children and their parents, and got ready to begin his attack. Meanwhile, the band Tin Man was in the middle of performing an encore on the Vineyard stage, very close to where Legan had just snuck into the festival. Many unsuspecting people were eating and enjoying the music, when suddenly, a single gunshot, closely followed by a string of several more, were heard. Keep in mind that as I'm retelling the timeline of events, this shooting lasted for a very, very short amount of time, only about a minute in total. So all of the victims that I will be talking about, all were injured or killed extremely close to one another. According to a report released by the district attorney, Legan's first shot seemed to have jammed the gun in some way, as people turned their attention towards the source of the sudden loud noise and observed him struggling for 15 to 20 seconds. One of the band members later gave an interview about this time.
What did you hear? What did you see?
Okay, we were on stage. We were doing an encore at the Vineyard stage, and I heard a pop. And it didn't sound right to me, so I turned in the direction of the pop, and I saw a gentleman in a green top with a gray handkerchief kind of around his neck and what appeared to be an assault rifle. And
A rifle?
Well, I'm not a gun guy, so it looked like a rifle. It was bigger than a pistol, smaller than a hunting rifle, and he was slapping the magazine. Evidently it was jammed or something, I don't know. And then he started shooting again in the direction of where all the food people were dining. And I said, guys, off. And we cleared the stage at that point and ducked under the stage so we wouldn't be visible.
Legan apparently eventually reloaded his rifle with a new magazine, which seemed to clear the issue, enabling him to begin firing one round after another. The initial gunfire was actually caught on at least one video that someone had been recording of the band prior to the attack beginning. A family was enjoying ice cream under a shade tent, which was pretty much directly in front of where Legan emerged, and were stunned when the shots rang out. Originally, They thought that they were fireworks, but quickly realized that they were in danger. The family immediately began to run away, but 13-year-old Kayla Salazar stayed back to help her stepfather's mother, who used a cane to walk. She was apparently supporting her as she moved away from the gunfire, slowing her own pace in order to do so. Heartbreakingly, Kayla was fatally shot in the upper body by one of the flying rounds. Her stepdad attempted to run back to help her, and was also shot, though he ended up surviving. Kayla's aunt later said, if Kayla hadn't been there, her stepfather's mother would have been shot. After striking Kayla, the district attorney's report stated that Legan began firing in a counterclockwise motion. Unfortunately, that was when another person was shot through the torso, a 25-year-old man named Trevor Irby. Sadly, he would be the second person to lose his life on what was supposed to be a relaxing day with his girlfriend. Nearby to the spot where Legan entered through the fence, a line of vendors' tents were set up, with people selling all sorts of goods. In one of them, a husband, Francisco, and wife Wendy were set up and selling different flavored honeys. Two workers that had just stepped away from the tent to use the restroom were startled when the shots went off. Like many others in the area, they initially thought the gunfire was just fireworks, but soon realized what was actually going on. After locating the source of the noise, they looked on in horror as they watched the gunmen shooting straight towards their boss's tent, which they were not too far away from themselves. One of the workers, a woman named Candace, said, "We were the only ones right there. He had a straight shot for both of us. I've never been so scared." Another worker and Candace's sister Cheryl later said, "We walk out, and I literally turn like this, and he's standing right there with his rifle. He's getting ready to put the bullets in it, and he just starts shooting. He's walking towards the tent where we were working." Both Francisco and Wendy, still under their tent, were struck with the gunfire and wounded as a result. It was then that Candace realized there were children still in the tent as well, including her own 10-year-old niece and her boss's 3-year-old son. Thankfully, the little girl acted fast and dragged the toddler under a table, doing her best to protect the both of them from the gunmen. Though Francisco and Wendy were both hit with the random spray of bullets, neither of them were fatally wounded. Thankfully, both of the kids survived the attack with no injuries as far as I could find. As absolute terror washed over those in the area, and as people grew frantic and began to flee, more people began documenting what was going on by recording on their phones.
Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Is there fire? Right here. Come on. What is going on? Oh, they shooting. Oh,
they shooting at the Garlic Festival. They are shooting. They shooting at the Garlic Festival. Oh my God.
this is crazy. Yo. This is actually crazy. How do you shoot out the Garlic Festival? Like, who you got beef with at the Garlic Festival?
By now, the shots had been going off long enough for people to shield themselves. Taking cover behind the line of portable toilets that Legan had passed on the way in was a 6-year-old boy, Stephen, his mother, and his grandmother. Legan continued firing while he was turning counterclockwise, and his bullets eventually began striking the area that the family was hiding in. Very sadly, Stephen and both of his family members were also struck by the gunfire, but the little boy's wounds turned out to be fatal. After Stephen was injured, his mother notified her husband and Stephen's father, Alberto, as quickly as she could, as he was at home at the time. He remembered her call, later saying, "I couldn't believe what was happening, that what she was saying was a lie. Maybe I was dreaming." Despite rushing to the hospital to be with his son, Stephen's father sadly never got to see him again, as he passed away very shortly after Alberto's arrival. He later recalled this heartbreaking time, saying, "They told me he was in critical condition and that they were working on him. 5 minutes later, they told me he was dead." According to a map of the festival grounds, A police booth was set up pretty close to where Legan initially entered through the fence. There were also several officers roaming the grounds at the time. This enabled their response to be incredibly quick, as they rushed to the scene very shortly after the first shots rang off. Within just a minute, 3 police officers that were present at the event sprinted towards the location and began searching for the source of the gunfire. It's reported that due to Legan's attire, the officers initially mistook him for another law enforcement officer. Just then, Legan noticed the responding officers, turned, and began shooting at them. Of course, they returned fire on Legan, who was subsequently struck multiple times in various parts of his body, including his back, legs, and hands. It's reported that authorities shot 18 rounds towards him. Though it was originally reported that it was the police's gunfire that killed Legan, the coroner later concluded that after being struck by the police, Legan retreated partially behind the inflatable slide and stuck the barrel of his rifle in his mouth. He then pulled the trigger, ending his own life.
Here. Go this way, ma'am.
I'm going where I was supposed to be.
Above me, right?
I'm holding.
Despite the attacker being pursued so quickly, he unfortunately was still able to take a few lives before he decided to end his own. According to reports, he fired at least 39 rounds, hitting 20 people in the process. His 75-round drum magazine was loaded in his rifle at the time of his death, 71 of which were unspent. 3 innocent people sadly lost their lives as a result of this shooting, 2 of them being young children. They were 6-year-old Stephen Romero, 13-year-old Kayla Salazar, and 25-year-old Trevor Irby, and all were killed with a single gunshot wound to the torso. Of course, many others were injured in the attack, with everyone involved suffering from some sort of shock and trauma afterwards. Due to the quick response of the officers, which overwhelmed Legan immediately, the shooting ended very shortly after it began. Thankfully, this meant that victims were able to be treated very quickly. Of course, EMS personnel also arrived to help, treating as many wounded people as possible. Victims were also transported to local hospitals to get more of the care that they needed. Originally, authorities were concerned that there may have been a second shooter acting with Legan that day. Apparently, some witnesses had reported seeing a possible accomplice, which initially pushed police to believe this could have been the case. They did many searches in the area in an attempt to find this supposed second shooter, but were never successful. Ultimately, no evidence of a second attacker was found, and authorities eventually identified the lone shooter as 19-year-old Santino Legan. Police were able to track down Legan's car and recovered the pump-action shotgun from inside of the trunk. Also found in the car were a gas can, a wilderness training manual, a tent, and binoculars. These items alluded to the possibility of him going on the run after the shooting and surviving in the woods. A pamphlet for the Gilroy Garlic Festival was also recovered. Other items of note found in the car included a clown mask, earplugs, bottle rockets, and 2 threaded pipes, which could be used to make an improvised explosive device. Not long after the shooting took place, authorities began a search of his home in Nevada. There, among other items, they found a bulletproof vest, a gas mask, ammo casings, and numerous different extremist writings, most political in nature. According to reports, some of the materials contradicted each other's ideologies, leading authorities to be unable to pin down the exact beliefs that Legan subscribed to. Judging based off of the Instagram post he made just before killing 3 people, all of whom were notably non-white, Legan most likely harbored racist views. According to reports, he seemed to direct his gunfire at random, so it's possible he was not intentionally trying to miss white people, but I thought it was important to mention. Authorities also recovered a few of Legan's electronic devices from his home in Nevada. There isn't much else reported on this though, so I'm unsure if they found anything helpful on them. Following the attack, many pondered on what Legan's motive for his violent outburst was. He clearly planned the shooting, but his reason for doing so can only be speculated on, as he didn't leave anything behind that explained his devastating actions. The owner of the gun shop that Legan purchased his rifle at later expressed his condolences for the victims and their families, saying, "The shooter in California, I hope you rot in hell. We pray for the victims. My heart hurts for all of them." With the attacker and the shooting itself now out of the way, let's take a moment to talk about each of the people who heartbreakingly lost their lives in the senseless attack. Kayla Allison Salazar was born on August 4th, 2005, and was very young, only 13 years old at the time of her death. Described as a bright, happy, and joyful kid, Kayla experienced bullying in her life, but according to her family, she never let it get her down, staying as positive as she could. Her family later spoke about her, saying, "Her intelligence, her strength, her tenacity motivated everyone to move forward. She was a happy and resilient girl." She had just finished 8th grade the month before her death and was set to celebrate her 14th birthday just a week later. Instead of spending her birthday at the lake like they planned to do, her friends and family were forced to celebrate the short life that she lived, just 2 days after she would have turned 14. In the time before attending the festival, Kayla was begging her family for a new golden retriever puppy, with many sources reporting that she wanted it mainly for her sister. It's said that she even left a note for her parents on the day of her death, yet again asking for a puppy. She absolutely loved animals and took amazing care of her existing pets. She reportedly loved to draw and had a dream of later becoming an animator. Sadly, she was never able to accomplish the goals she laid out for herself, even at a very young age. 25-year-old Trevor Dion Irby was born on December 8, 1993, and was from New York. He was described by family as always having been a good person, with his grandmother later saying that he was the perfect child that any parent would want. As far as I could tell, Trevor was raised in part by his grandmother and his grandfather, who sadly passed away just a month prior to Trevor's death. His grandmother, Juanita, later spoke about him, saying, "In all the years, I never had to holler at him or nothing. That's how good he was. He was a real good kid. He really loved life." She recalled that as a child, Trevor never associated himself with the bad crowd and always kept very good grades. He reportedly had many friends growing up and was into sports. After Trevor grew up and moved out of the house, and especially after his grandfather died, he and his grandmother talked every day on the phone. I read that Trevor made a point to call her every single day to tell her that he loved her. In fact, when later asked about their last conversation, Juanita stated that the last thing they said to each other was, "I love you." Trevor's parents had the exact same things to say about him, that he was the perfect kid, was always kind, and never hurt anyone. According to them, he always made sure to let them know just how much he loved them as well. 2 years before his untimely and unexpected death, Trevor graduated from college with a biology degree. I also read that in addition to his degree, Trevor had an EMT certificate and was advancing towards his goal of becoming a physician's assistant. According to his family, Trevor had moved to the Bay Area of California with his fiancée, Sarah, just 3 months before his death. She was with him at the festival that day, but managed to survive without injury. And last but not least, born on June 13, 2013, Stephen Romero was only 6 years old when he sadly passed away. He had just celebrated his birthday the month before his death by visiting Legoland in Southern California. Stephen's grandmother recalled that he was always a good kid, who loved anyone and everyone. By all accounts that I saw, Stephen was always happy and chatty. You can tell how full of joy he was just by looking at the photos of him. He was set to soon begin first grade, and made sure to let everyone he talked to know just how excited he was for this time in his life. His father later recalled the young boy saying, "He was joyful, always wanted to play, always positive. In fact, many that had the pleasure of knowing Stephen would attest that he was a very playful, cheerful, and kind kid. It was apparent through reading up on his life that his family absolutely adored him. Many of them came out after his death and spoke out about their devastating loss. Stephen should have been able to grow up and live the life he deserved. Very sadly, like Kayla, he lived a very short life, heartbreakingly missing out on his very promising and fruitful future. If nothing else, I'm glad to know that he was surrounded by people who loved him before his passing. Please take a moment to think about the victims of today's case, as well as their families, who unfortunately lost 3 bright and irreplaceable souls that day. Thank you all for sticking around to the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for the support, and please subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to go above and beyond to support us and the channel, please consider joining our membership. Thank you so much to our existing members. Your overwhelming support truly means the world to us. It enables us to continue doing what we do, which we are eternally grateful for. Until next time, we hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and make sure to keep yourself safe. We will see you with another video as soon as possible. Stay tuned.